Hello, everyone. This is Keith Sawinski with Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and just welcoming you to the quarterly Civil 3D webinar by ACEC. Today's topic is titled Remote Working Best Practices for CAD and Civil 3D Users. Before we get started with the featured presentation, I just have a few quick slides to cover, just WisDOT update type stuff. First, last month we released a Civil 3D 2018 config package. There's not a lot new in that package, but we did update a few things. The first is related to pipe network and pipe network pay items. The December 2019 template that we issued for Civil 3D 2018, there was a disconnect between some of the pipe network parts in the storm sewers parts list and the pay items. So we fixed that with the latest template that we just issued. And we issued a known issues report on the Civil 3D knowledge base that tells you how you can fix existing drawings if you had started any storm sewer pipe networks using that template. I'll just switch over quick and show you where that known issue article is. If you're on the Civil 3D knowledge base, you just go to known issues. It's the first one on top. It's really pretty darn easy to fix the drawing if you have that issue, but this is where you find out where to make that fix. The second thing we have in the Civil 3D 2018 package update are rebuilt reports. This was an ongoing effort we were doing to try to modernize a lot of our custom reports and macros source code. So the new reports are out there now for Civil 3D 2018, and a lot of little bug fixes, some functionality improvements. There's no new reports. It's all the same ones we had before, but we've made some improvements to them. The rebuild was sort of a big effort, so they're essentially brand new reports. So if you find any bug fixes with that, please report them to our CAE support mailbox so we can get those addressed. We weren't going to issue another Civil 3D 2018 update, but now we are anticipating we probably will do one more update, mainly because WisDOT and a lot of other folks that use our customizations haven't been able to make the jump to Civil 3D 2020 very easily because everybody's teleworking at this point. So with everybody's, a lot of us are still in Civil 3D 2018 doing production work. We're gonna do one more update, and that update will be really only critical fixes. We're not gonna make any new improvements or anything like that. So what do I mean by critical fixes? Basically anything where there's not a workaround, or if the workaround is overly time consuming or complicated to do, we'll look at addressing that. Also last month, we did our initial release for Civil 3D 2020, the configuration package for that. So that's available for download now. A couple of key things about that to know. We did implement reference templates with Civil 3D 2020. They added some functionality in there that made that possible for us. So that's just something to be aware of. The reference templates, if you're just a regular user, there's really not much you need to know. You just start a new drawing like you normally would, but just be aware that those drawings are connected with reference templates now. So the one advantage of that is, you'll always be able to have the latest and greatest WisDOT standards in all your drawings if they remain connected to the reference templates. They're set up to be turnkey. You shouldn't have to go in there and do anything with the reference templates or manipulate them. We got it set up in such a way that you just sort of work with them the way they are. With that said, if any consultants out there, if you've created your own reference templates, you certainly, you could reference your own templates into the WisDOT one and work that way as well. Backward compatibility. As many of you already know, Civil 3D 2018 can open Civil 3D 2020 DWG files. You can even edit them. but there are some limitations to the backward compatibility. So I just advise everybody to get yourself familiar with what is backward compatible and what is not. We do have information on our Civil 3D knowledge base, and I'll just switch over to that quick. If you go to Civil 3D version info, and under C3D 2020, the Civil 3D release comparison 2018 to 2020, there's two sub-articles in here, one called interoperability between 2020.3 and prior 2020 versions, and then this DWG format one. These are the two that really talk about backward compatibility and things we found on that. I'd also advise you to really look at everything under this particular page. There's a lot of good information here. The WizDot Civil 3D Apps desktop tool that we've had in place for a while now. The tool used to include an enable disable WizDot tool. Basically that was used mostly on the consultant end. If you had other clients and you want to disable the WizDot configuration when you're working on a particular project, that would quickly do that for you. We've actually retired that for one reason really, because the way we've redone how the WizDot configuration is loaded when you start Civil 3D. Now the way it's set up, and this is for Civil 3D 2018 and 2020, is the WizDot configuration will only load if you use the WizDot Civil 3D desktop shortcut. If you don't use that shortcut, it will not load. So that's a nice improvement, but we understand that there's still some Civil 3D 2016 users out there working on projects, finishing those up. So you might still have a need for the enable disable WizDot tool. So if you're working on a Civil 3D 2016 project, but you want to move forward to 2020 and you found when you did that, you lost the tool, you can still get a legacy version of it. We've posted on our roadway design files page, we have a 2016 WizDot apps zip file. This has the legacy version of WizDot Civil 3D apps. So that has the enable disable with it. The one thing I would just note that with this is I'd only use this older version for enable disable only. It doesn't have any of the new updates we've done with WizDot Civil 3D apps, like with the earthwork macro and stuff like that. Finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Civil 3D licensing and exception requests. We've heard in the past and even recently, some people being a little tentative about moving to the next version of Civil 3D because they're worried about losing access to a prior version, which is true to some extent. Autodesk does have a previous version support policy, which basically just means that you can only get support and licensing for 3 versions. So basically, if you went to 2020, you'd have 19, 18, and 17, and you'd kind of be out of luck for 2016. However, we did ask our Autodesk rep about this because we totally understand there's people with 2016 out there and you have 2016 projects and they need to finish those up for WizDot. At the same time, we want people to be able to access the Civil 3D 2020 improvements. What we've been told is that everybody should be able to get an exception on this licensing. So if you want to move to 2020, you would request that you get Civil 3D 2016 added to your licensing. And they should be able to do that for you. Again, that's what we've been told. We haven't heard from any consultants if they've done that and been successful or not. But I would certainly encourage you all to ask that question. And if you're having issues with that, if they're not doing it for you, let one of us know at WizDot and we'll see if there's anything we can do about it on our end. With that, that's all I have. I'm going to pass it over now to Josh, and he's going to take care of the main presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me? I was having some issues there. As we all know, we are all working from home or somewhat of a remote capacity these days. So what we wanted to do today was just go over some of the best practices for working remotely and some of the different options that are available to everyone or yourselves. So what we're going to cover, remote working best practices for CAD or Civil 3D users. We're going to take a look at kind of the remote desktop protocol, VPN, touch on BIM 360 quickly, talk about some different licensing options, and then file coordination and managing larger data sets, as well as some communication tools. So remote desktop protocol, this is probably the least disruptive way to access your remote environment. There are some caveats to that. One nice thing, as you can see on screen here, we've got the Windows remote desktop or Microsoft Windows remote desktop that is natively on any Windows 8 or 10 install that you can just activate and use. It's free. Also, there's a Google Chrome remote desktop that's free as well. And then there's a whole slew of different remote desktop services out there that are either free or for purchase, and they have their different pros and cons. So just some advantages of remote desktop protocol. It's free, or it can be. Work is kept on premises, and then it's the least disruptive and easiest to set up in a short order, or if you need to do this quickly. We've all been working remotely for a few weeks at least now, so this shouldn't be anything of a surprise moving forward. Some disadvantages to the remote desktop protocol are going to be that you need your machine in the office to be turned on. So let me back up a second, and I'm assuming that most people on the call are aware of what remote desktop protocol is. Essentially, you remote into your workstation that is in your office or wherever your work environment is. You don't need a high-powered machine. All you need is an internet connection or browser. If you're using the Google Chrome remote desktop, you could remote in off of your phone, per se, if you had a mouse to control things on your phone. But that work machine that you're remoting into does need to be turned on. You are going to experience some lag, and this is all dependent on internet speeds, and it's in the realm of a half a second per click. So if you're in a production environment where you're grinding away on drawings, this can get annoying. But it's an easy thing to set up. And another disadvantage is it does not allow you to reboot your machine. So this generally requires someone to be in the office to monitor these machines, make sure that they're up and running. If a restart needs to happen, you need to coordinate that. Moving into virtual private network, or VPN, many of the clients that I deal with prior to the situation we're all in right now had VPN access to their office already in place. But just as a kind of a backup on what VPN is, you set up a virtual private network in your office on premises that users can access. Generally, there's some sort of credential login to access that. Offices that or companies that have like a main office and satellite offices around most likely already had some form of VPN in place. This allows you to take your machine with you home. Generally, this is a laptop, but in the current situation, there's a lot of people bringing their work desktops home as well, but you access just your network through your internet connection. There are some pros and cons to a virtual private network as well. The advantage is access to the server and files from realistically anywhere. You just need that internet connection. It's very secure. Generally, you're purchasing a service that has security measures around it for that VPN access. And then you can ping your server to pull licenses for your Autodesk software. Some of the disadvantages to virtual private networks, the best VPNs aren't free. There is going to be some setup time if you did not already have this in place at your office or your firm's main office. using a VPN might lower your connection speeds. So when you have multiple people accessing the same VPN, especially if, say, you're a firm of 50 people and you've got 50 users and everyone's trying to ping that VPN at the same time, that's going to make some significant lag. Save time can be slow. So essentially you're opening and closing and saving files across an internet connection. The remote desktop protocol, think of it that you're just running your mouse through an internet connection. So this can cause things to be laggy when you're opening files, especially large files. If you've got multiple data references and X references, even if you're using reference templates, all of that information needs to be transferred across the internet. So your home internet speed comes into effect, as well as the internet speed that's set up on your VPN at your office. There are some remote working tips out there that will help optimize your experience when you're working at home. If you're using full screen crosshairs, this can be graphically taxing. So setting your crosshairs to that out of the box setting of 5 will actually improve your performance. Turn off your dynamic input. This is another thing graphically taxing. Anything that's really graphically taxing on your system is going to slow down your experience when you are working remotely. Turning off selection previews, where you get that highlight around items that you're hovering over before you actually click on them. And a lot of this stuff is in the options dialog under user settings or display settings. Change your automatic save settings to 20 minutes or more, especially on VPN. If you are, it depends on where your automatic save location is as well, but this can increase efficiency as well. If you are saving your auto saves to your company's server, it would be recommended to change that file path and move that autosave location locally, because every time you ping an autosave, it's got to write across that internet connection back and forth. Use the cache model tab and all layout tabs option on the system tab in the options dialog. Change your index CTL variable to 0. So this disables the indexing of layers, which can also increase that efficiency. Then some specific Civil 3D functionality. I'm assuming we're all using data shortcuts, but definitely leverage the power of data shortcuts to reduce that file size, especially when you're accessing items remotely. Use Object Viewer to view 3D models as opposed to orbiting around. This is going to, again, reduce that graphic performance taxing needed to orbit a large model. Most users aren't orbiting an entire model in their actual drawing space. They're going into Object Viewer for that purpose already. Change your Civil 3D styles so that less objects are showing in the drawing. So this is a change that you can make while you're actually designing or drafting, is to go in and turn some of those component layers off in your actual Civil 3D styles, making your display of your Civil 3D objects less graphically taxing. You can also change those back or create a secondary style just to work with, but this will definitely increase some performance, or at least the user's experience. And then when dealing with corridors or surfaces, disable that automatic rebuild option and manually rebuild those items. As anyone that has worked with large corridors knows, if you have that corridor set to rebuild automatic and you're making adjustments to your alignment or your profiles, every time you click, that corridor has to crunch and rebuild itself. So let's take a quick look at BIM 360 design. This is new functionality for Civil 3D. This has been around in the architectural / Revit world for 3 to 4 years now. They're a little bit ahead of the game with this. WisDOT has not implemented BIM 360, but I figured I would throw this out there if you are working on non-WisDOT projects. So what BIM 360 is it's cloud-based file storage with security measures, user access rights, a lot of collaboration that can be done. Data shortcuts, external references all work in the BIM 360 environment, allowing your projects and all of your project files to be removed from your server or your local on-premises location and push that information up into the cloud. You do need 2020.3 release of Civil 3D for this functionality. So some advantages of BIM 360, those projects are stored in the cloud. You're really just based off of your own personal computer's internet speed to access that data. There are user permissions around access as far as what can be done. If you're just a viewer, if you can edit items, and then also you can lock those drawings as well. It integrates with Civil 3D 2020.3, as I stated previously. Some of the disadvantages, especially if you're new to BIM 360, is it's a little bit cumbersome to set up the first few times. It is a change in workflow, so it's a little bit disruptive, and it does take some pre-planning, some forward thinking, or working with a consultant to get that environment set up. And then also another big thing is it's just for project collaboration. It does not replicate your server environment. So if you're working with outside parties, this is a great option to be able to collaborate with those either consulting engineering firms if you're working with municipalities or subcontractors, things of that nature. And then you can also push that out into the construction phase of the project. And there's a whole slew of other features inside of BIM 360, but because WisDOT is not currently using BIM 360, I figured I'd just touch on it. There's more information out on Autodesk's websites. So file coordination and managing large data sets. First and foremost, stay in contact with your team, especially if there are multiple designers on a project. This is going to alleviate a lot of assumptions and just stress at home. One thing to consider, it depends on, again, your remote setup. If you're doing virtual desktop, or not virtual desktop, remote desktop protocol or virtual private network, you may want to consider actually cutting that tie and moving items locally. It depends on the size of the project and again, the complexity of the team involved, but it's something to think about. This will allow you to cut that remote connection and actually work on your own machine at home without just working locally, so you don't have to rely on that remote connectivity. Optimize your settings and environment. The couple slides that we went through prior around settings, recommended steps for working remotely is going to help deal with those larger data sets as well. And again, reference files, XREFs, data shortcuts, DREFs, even utilizing reference templates are going to show significant improvements in your day-to-day work life while we're all working from home. Licensing access. This can be frustrating at times. This goes back to coordinating with people on your team. If you have network licenses, say, just as an example, you've got 40 employees and you've got 30 network licenses for those 40 employees. When everyone's working from home, there's the potential for all of those licenses to be taken. So it takes some coordination there. If you do have standalone licenses, you can check out your network licenses. You can borrow standalone licenses that are pinging a license manager on your server. And then the one that I didn't touch on yet was the work at home license. There's information, again, out on the Autodesk website around all of these different options to take that licensing off of the server and actually replicate that at home. Now your work at home license is a duplicate license, and I believe it lasts for 13 months before you need to reestablish that work at home license. That will allow, I don't know if I should go down this road, but essentially you can get 2 licenses for one if you are utilizing that work at home license. So some communication tools, being that we are all in a remote environment right now, some that come to mind right away: Teams for collaborating internally, hosting meetings, as well as chats and phone conversations. Skype for Business is another good option out there. It's very similar to Teams, but for either phone communications, chat communications, things of that nature. Zoom, which we're using right now for this presentation, is really taken off, and there's a lot of companies using Zoom to replicate that in-office experience while we are all working from home. And the GoToMeeting has been around forever. There's GoToMeeting, GoToAssist, and GoToWebinar that you can utilize for that. And so this realistically is our new office space, this working from home. And I just wanted to share these. These are some of the MGAC employees in a Teams meeting, but just this new experience that we're all living in dealing with working from home. We've got different distractions around, and that's one thing to touch on too, is find that balance between work life and home life. It is disruptive to be working from home. Kids are out of school. We've got pets around. I've got my children upstairs making some noise. I hope they're not muddying up the audio on this call right now. But and then these are just, again, a bunch of different setups of people's home offices. We've got everything from nice desks in front of windows to people sitting on the couch while their kids are playing, many different configurations. So you're not alone out there when you're working from home. The last thing I really wanted to touch on was the ACEC Fall Workshop. The call for proposals is due on June 1st. There should be another email coming out from Andrew at ACEC Wisconsin calling for those proposals coming up after this webcast. And that's realistically all that I had for you guys today. So thank you. And this is my email address up there. And I don't know if anyone else had anything to add for today. And with that, I think we're going to end the webcast. Thanks for everyone who attended. Stay safe out there.